Hi, I'm Laura Humm. I'm one of the Dialogue Doctor editors, and I'm here with Scott Veatch, one of our dashers Scott, you won a free session.
Yes,
You've actually done all three of the dashes, right?
yes, I have.
So what keeps you coming back?
Oh, well, I definitely enjoy it. I definitely enjoy, the community and the office hours are great and the webinars are great. So yeah, it just, you know, having, the little daily videos, it's nice, to start the day with, the daily videos. So that is great. So yeah.
Nice. Well, we love
Yeah, I mean,
having
yeah,
you.
it just, it's sort of, a little bit more focused, try to, focus on and, get more words on the page, but it's a little, sometimes seems a little haphazard sometimes because I'm sort of still learning. It's like, okay, what do I actually make sure to do if I want to, get, focus in on trying to get as many words on the page?
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're really glad to hear that that's been successful for you, and we love having you. And you keep winning. I think you won the end of the one in the spring too, right?
Yes, yeah. If I remember correctly, I think I won them both. Each one, of course. Did Heather that came in first, or somebody else came in first? But you
Last
guys were
time.
generous enough to give us both.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah. Well,
that's
the
one
thing
of
is,
the
I did not realize how I have a second monitor, and it did appear that that definitely helped.
yeah. When you play Kahoot, it definitely helps to have a second monitor to be able to see both of them. Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Yeah,
great.
I was trying to be as fair as I could. No,
Hey,
so okay.
a win is a
Wait
win.
until Jeff reads them all out before answering, sort of thing.
Well, and JP played this time, and he did very, very well as well, which
Yeah.
I mean, you would hope. Um, so that's great. Well, we like doing the competitions because it definitely helps keep people motivated and gives us another way to connect. So,
No,
congratulations on your win.
thank
So,
you.
all right, well, we're going to do an editing session together. You sent me a chapter. You want to tell me a little bit about your story and kind of where you are in your writing journey?
Okay. Yeah. The story. I mean, I'm terrible with blurbs. I know I'm terrified of giving anything away because I liked having my own little,
Yeah.
well, surprises and twists and such. So yeah, basically I'm just calling it fantasy action adventure. There's a lot of chasing and running and figuring not figuring out puzzles, but figuring out situations and how to
Mm-hmm.
overcome situations, and a lot of some fights and some action that way, and
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
all of that. So yes, and hopefully a little bit of comedy as well. So yeah, and yeah, for my writer journey, I've in some way or form, I've been doing this, or in some ways I've been doing it a long time because sort of started when I was in my early teens. I basically, I did play Dungeons and Dragons in the early 80s and ever since. And then there was a book series called Dragonlance that, I was really
Mm-hmm.
into, and so I that was inspiring. Plus, what we had a few other things. Of course, I had read The Hobbit by then, and then there was an animated Lord of the Rings. So that was a so I had and there was a Japanese anime that came over to the States called Robotech in the 80s. So that also was a major influence as well. So I did that all by hand. I didn't really have a word processor until late 80s, I think.
Wow.
So yeah, I did everything by hand, and in some ways that ended up being a, a block because at some point it's like, okay, how do I get this in the computer?
Yeah.
And so that was one of the roadblocks, and just I went on to become a software engineer and had some interest in computer animation, a little a little bit into art, not much, but a lot of 3D stuff. So yeah,
Hmm.
I had other things for to channel my creativity in, but I always had these characters running around in my head. Uh, a lot of the characters, storylines, I would have small bits and pieces. I had some scenarios that I came up with, but I never really was able to come up with a really coherent storyline. And I would try to put aside a little bit of time, but it was never consistent. I never was very good at trying to find time to do it, and the I never found any real good books that really inspired me. So it was sort of on the back burner for quite a long time, and then what? Yeah, about to say later on. I was reading Dresden Files was inspiring, and then it was like the TV show Leverage. It's also
Hmm.
really good because I think my first instinct was to try to do like fantasy version of Leverage, and it's like then I saw what it takes to. It's like, okay, how do you write a big cast? That looks a little overwhelming, so I think I will narrow it down to three.
Yeah.
So, and then right about the same time, I had a good friend challenge me to write a short story because all of this was in my head, most of it or vague, basic outlines. I
Hmm.
hadn't really done any, narrative writing in a long time. So she just got me to write a short story, and I basically took piece of backstory I had worked out in my head and just fleshed that out and expanded it out to a full-fledged story, and that led to me finding online tools for critique and editing tools like Pro Writing Aid, that sort of thing. And
Hmm.
then that led to finding lectures by Dan Brown, Neil Gaiman, and Brandon Sanderson, and then I got on a bunch of what was that mailing lists and did a bunch of webinars and yeah, but basically I found out about discovery writing, and basically that's what I've been doing for it's getting to be close to 3 years on this. Everything has changed, so I can't. It isn't the same project that I started. Well, vaguely, but because plot is all changed, some of the character arcs has changed. Yeah, the character arc, my original character arc was starting to change, and then I found you guys, and it's like, okay, yeah, this is now I know exactly. Now I have a clear idea, much clearer idea what I want. So yeah, it helped a lot, and because yeah, there was a long time where I didn't really understand any kind of well, why do you need character change? People don't, James Bond doesn't change.
And it's interesting too because a lot of stories don't have character growth in them, but the characters around the main character grow and change. So there's always a character arc. It just always isn't always your main character. So I'm glad you were able to get that all worked out. So you want to tell us a little bit about the scene we're about to edit together?
Okay, so yeah, so this scene takes place right right after basically an attack. So basically, we have a sort of what a conclave of wizards have come to a specific place that has there's basically the ground is completely cloudy, from a cloud-like material. I don't think I got that too far into this scene, but and so they're here to investigate it. And there's also, they set up this test to test, the usually apprentices, but are also are one of, Cassie, one of the main vehicles, is also taking this test. And so basically this will, allow them to be able to freely use a certain power. So basically they become certified in, and being able to use this specific type of magic, and
Hmm.
therefore they don't have to have supervision anymore. And basically they can, get clear access to it. And
Hmm.
so they get attacked. Cassie uses this, the test to sort of uh, uh, corner and basically you sort of reveal some, a necessary secret of these creatures, but at the cost of destroying, basically doing a lot of damage to the machine, and so the wizards are rather irritated with her because they think she caused all this damage, and they're not really acknowledging the fact that they think that she did it just by luck, when in fact she actually knew something about them that was in a previous scene. She found that
Hmm.
in a previous scene.
Okay.
So she's upset that they're not taking, basically accepting her accomplishments and only seeing what she did wrong, and she's not even uh, really accepting that she did anything wrong yet.
Hmm.
And so and due to all the magic that used in the previous scenes, she's now tired. She is upset, so that's where she is. And then our other vehicle was completely cut off and didn't get to see any of this happening. So
Hmm.
she feels very concerned, because she wasn't able to be there to protect her little sister. And now she can basically tell from the other wizards that something very bad, basically they're in a lot of danger, and Cassie is not uh, acting appropriately.
So this scene is told from Kendra's point of view,
Yes,
and she's kind of frustrated with her sister, who's very eager to get out of the area and isn't making good decisions.
yeah.
So with that, let's jump in. I'm going to share my screen, maybe. I always say that really confidently and then, okay. And now it'll take a minute for Zoom to catch up. All right, are you able to see my screen? I have two Word documents, both
No,
with,
it started screen sharing.
okay. Well, we will wait for it. Sometimes it's really fast and sometimes it's really slow. So Scott, we worked on this scene a little bit together in an office hour.
Yes,
And one of the things that you were working on in the office hour was making sure that the scene had the emotional impact that you wanted it to have.
yes.
And when we looked at it, your version that you handed to me, oh my gosh, it's like from a word processor that you
Yeah,
sent to me digitally is
yes.
on the left, and my version is on the right, and we'll look at them together.
All right.
And you made a lot of changes from the last time for anybody who's watching and not listening. All of the stuff that is in blue is the new content that Scott added to tell us what Kendra was thinking. The original version had a lot of action. Kendra did this, Kendra did that, Kendra did this, Kendra did that. A little bit of thought about the frustration with her sister, but we were losing the emotional impact of the frustration that Kendra is having, not being able to control Cassie, and Cassie's making all these bad decisions. So, and I think you did a really good job of orienting the reader to the fact that Kendra was upset. But you'll notice that I have two lines highlighted in this pinkish purple. These are Cassie's actions. So right now, what you have is, and now she's getting impatient. She makes even worse decisions when she's impatient, Kendra thought, as Cassie squeezed past two wizards on the path up and out of the meteorite crater. The wizards already looked annoyed at her, and that isn't even helping. I mean, she's running off without any idea of where she needs to go. I can tell she's tired, but she just won't slow down. She just becomes more difficult to deal with. Kendra picked up her pace up the sticky mud path as sporadic water sprinkled down on her. I need to find a way to stop her from doing anything else reckless. The cloudy sponge-like ground of the crater floor was unsettling, but at least it was easier to walk on. Once she crested the crater, a gust of wind hit her, but only briefly cut through her clothing. Everyone else was taking the funnel cloud seriously, and she was just rushing around like she can't wait to get out of here. We need to stick together. Kendra scanned the area where Cassie headed towards. A few wizards must be in earshot, but thankfully Cassie wasn't about to intrude on anyone's space. Cassie stopped next to a corp of trees where they had met earlier. So you'll notice in that whole section, we know that Kendra is chasing Cassie, but we only see two of Cassie's actions. So all of this frustration that Kendra is feeling is a little bit hard for us as the reader to place because all
Hmm.
we know is what happened before. And maybe that was a long time since we read from the last chapter to this chapter. And all we see is Cassie squeezing past two wizards and then stopping next to some trees. So what I tried to do is I tried to break up what Kendra was thinking and adding in Cassie's actions. So that's one
Hmm.
part of it. The other thing that I did is there's a lot of internal thought from Kendra thinking she about Cassie. What I wanted to do is balance that out a little bit and put some of it into quotation marks. So
Oh,
starting right from the beginning, you'll notice on my version, the anything that Kendra says is in green, and then anything that Cassie does is in purple, and then all of that inner thought that you had is still in the blue, and then the black are just like the orienting information. So now it reads, Cassie, slow down, Kendra shouted to her sister who squeezed past two wizards up on the path out of the meteorite crater. She makes even worse decisions when she's impatient, Kendra thought. Cassie seemed oblivious that the wizards already looked annoyed at her. This isn't going to
hmm.
help, Kendra tried again. Does she even have any idea where she needs to go? Cassie didn't slow down. I know you're tired and getting more difficult to deal with. Kendra loved her sister, but this was getting frustrating. She picked up her pace while on the sticky mud path as sporadic water sprinkled down. I need to find a way to stop her from doing anything reckless. Cassie was getting close to the top of the crater now. I'll talk about the funnel clouds in a second. Wait for me, Kendra called again, watching everyone else taking the funnel clouds seriously as her sister rushed around like she can't wait to get out of here. We need to stick together, right? So now you'll notice that by taking all of that out of her inner thought and balancing it with what Cassie is doing, we can feel the frustration that Kendra is feeling because we keep calling to Cassie. And we've all been in that situation
Hmm.
where we're trying to go somewhere, we're trying to do something, and we're with somebody else and they're walking just a little too fast, or they're just a little bit ahead of us, and we keep calling to them and they won't stop and they won't turn around. And that gets really frustrating. So by seeing Cassie's actions throughout the scene, those things that Kendra was thinking. And you'll notice most of this is all the same language that you had. If you put them side by side, you can see, right? Like she makes worse decisions when she's impatient. That's right there. That's your
Right.
line. I just took the some of those elements and I turned them into vocalizations. I turned them into Kendra shouting because now we're hearing it and we're thinking about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing that I did is because you have a lot of Kendra's inner thoughts and I added the language, I put Kendra's inner thoughts in italics to separate them out so we know exactly what she's thinking versus what she's saying versus what she's doing.
Okay, yeah, that was one. That was a major question I had. It was like, okay, how do you actually, you know, put it on the page because I was trying to look at examples. Everybody had a slightly different opinion. I know someone had a strong opinion of italics at some point, but I couldn't remember what it was in the
Oh,
community. But
yeah, yeah, there is. Whenever italics are mentioned, everybody kind of holds their breath and waits for the fight to come. In general, italics are tend to be overused, which is where so many of us in the community feel very strongly about their use. Um,
mm,
so when you're going to use italics, you want to use them for one thing. What tends to happen is people use them for inner thought, and then they use them for text messages, and then they use them for somebody shouting, and then they use them for a computer voice. And then the focus on the
okay,
fact that you're using italics doesn't actually help anymore. So if you're going to use them for inner thought this way, then just using them for inner thought and nothing else works just fine.
okay,
Um,
okay.
if you don't like the vocalizations and you decide that you like the breaking it up, but you want it all to be what Kendra is thinking, maybe Cassie's too far away to shout to her, or the wind, or she doesn't want to draw attention or whatever,
All right.
then you could do it the way that you have it, where but start it with Kendra thought, gosh, Cassie is getting so impatient. She makes such bad decisions when she's impatient. And you're putting the idea that it's a thought ahead instead of using it like a dialogue tag,
Mm,
because you have to orient your reader to the fact that when you're saying she in the paragraph, you're not using your third party narrator voice, you're using Kendra's inner voice. So,
right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Because I think there's at least once or twice I say I.
yep.
It's like I'm not slipping into the first person perspective. I'm just expressing a thought. But it's like, how do I
Right,
do that?
exactly. And, it works great to do that if that's the direction that you want to go. The other way you can do it is if you don't want it to be, if you don't like the italics, but you like the quotation marks, the other thing you can do is you can just change the structure of the sentence to make it say, Kendra thought her sister made worse decisions when she was being impatient. Instead of
Mm,
it saying, does she even have any idea where she needs to go? Kendra was frustrated because she didn't think Cassie even had any idea where to go, right? So you can turn it around and make it narrative prose instead of the inner thought. In this case, though, I think that what Kendra is saying in her mind versus what she's saying out loud, paired with Cassie being oblivious to what's going on around her, I think it gives your reader a sense of intensity. So I actually really like the way that you added the inner thought in that first person, even though your story is a third person narrative.
right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to do a deep POV. I think that's what it's
Mm.
called. Yeah. What was it? Leigh Bardugo, I think, author of Six of Crows and all them. That's the kind of narrative or yeah, POV I'm probably shooting for or something along those lines. It's a deep POV. And it's odd because it's like some of it is, some thoughts are actually in just normal text and then other thoughts are in italics. I can't really know. I don't really understand the distinction other than they're small. It's
Mhm.
like, okay, it's like, okay, I'm gonna punch this up, but
Yep.
it's all inner thought. It's just this is a little bit stronger, I guess. But
Yeah.
yeah, but it's
Okay.
interesting. But yeah, all right. Yeah, no, no, this looks good.
Okay. So, going on, because you gave me about 2,000 words. So going into the next section, oh, I want to go back to this one element about the funnel clouds,
Oh, the funnel clouds. Yeah.
right? So you've got this funnel cloud happening that everyone's taking seriously. And as we get into a little bit further into the discussion, there's some magic happening with these funnel clouds where people can watch other people, and it almost feels like there's one group that's like controlling them. And it seems to me, because we're several chapters into your book now, that these funnel clouds have probably been discussed at
Yeah.
some point before this moment.
Yes.
Um, as an editor, I always, always, always recommend that authors find a way to reduce reader burden as much as possible, even when they're bringing up elements that they've already talked about in their story. So even though you probably, and as you get later into the scene, Cassie's talking about the funnel clouds and her experience with them. So even though there's that information around them, I like to see authors find a way to bring those elements to the immediate state of mind of the reader. So in this case, Kendra is running around chasing after her sister, and she mentions that everybody's worried about the funnel clouds, but we don't actually get to see them from Kendra's perspective. So and this is where I did have to fill in a little bit. We could tell that Kendra was chasing Cassie, and it felt like she was kind of chasing her up a hill or up the side of a crater, and
Yeah.
then kind of loses sight of her as she kind of goes out and over, right? Like if
Right.
thinking about like looking up at somebody when they're at the crest, we kind of lose sight of them.
Right.
So, in order to bring those two ideas together, as Kendra's trying to catch up to Cassie, Cassie gets to the top of the crater. Now is a perfect place for you to say the funnel clouds were so close, or the funnel clouds started again, or something where Kendra is actually seeing the funnel clouds and describing them, maybe adding an element of worry. So, what I did here is I just put that in brackets to let you know that I took some editorial liberties here.
All right.
As you go back, this is just my cheat as an editor when I'm using other people's language or I'm making an edit that feels very within the character's voice, I just type it in line. But when I have to take an editorial leap, I put them in brackets just to make them a little bit easier to find. But that's what I meant by the funnel clouds were so close she could almost touch them, right?
Oh. Oh, okay. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that's not so basically one thing that comes to mind is I don't know if we could get to the point where like at the crest
Mm.
it basically would be where was the last time she Kendra saw them. So if we could do like a quick flashback or something like that, that could be a possibility, I guess. How would
Or you could go
what
the other
would be
way.
because they're not in the immediate area.
Okay, so then maybe what she says is something along the lines of those funnel clouds could come back at any moment, right? Like,
Yeah,
or she's thinking back, when was the last time I saw that last funnel cloud? If the funnel cloud comes when Cassie is out of my sight, what am I going to do? Right? Like,
yeah.
whatever it is, something to orient the reader to this idea, other than because you had this great line about
Because I didn't
everyone
mention.
else was watching the funnel clouds. Yeah, everyone else is taking these funnel clouds seriously, and she's just rushing around like she can't wait to get away from here, right? So if you're going to bring them in, you have to bring them in a way that the reader is going to understand what that means,
Mm,
or you can just leave them out because they're not happening right now. So
oh,
either one works.
hmm.
But this is what I would do if you're going to leave them in.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, maybe everyone is taking the threat seriously, or do I make it? Would it make more sense to make it a little bit more vague, or
Um, so if so, what is Kendra seeing that makes her think that that people are taking the clouds seriously?
Hmm. I'm not particularly sure at the moment.
So
Yeah.
in this case, if they're funnel clouds, I'm assuming they're coming from the sky and
Yeah.
they're like what we think of as a tornado. So,
Yeah. Yeah. They are, what is 8 feet? They're not exactly tornadoes. They're basically like 8 feet tall and maybe 3 feet wide, that sort of thing.
okay.
So yeah, I mean they're definitely scary. Let's see, but yeah, it's just and I hadn't really worked out too much of what the other people were doing. I just wanted to make. I wanted to be. I was just trying. Basically, I'm trying to make it clear that the other people are taking it seriously, and she isn't. Is
Okay, so then what I would say is something along the lines of, Cassie was getting close to the top of the crater. No one else was going up to the top of the hill. They were staying in the lower parts where the funnel clouds had a harder time reaching. Or everyone else kept looking at the sky, including Kendra, looking to see where the next funnel cloud would come, even though we haven't seen one in 30 minutes. But Cassie just seems to be oblivious, right? Like, if
right.
you're going to bring them up, orient the reader to why you're bringing them up because you haven't talked about them since the start of this scene. So,
Okay.
because you're bringing them up in this scene, you want to orient us to why is Kendra worried about them? Is she worried about who's on the other side of it? Is she worried about it knocking somebody out? Is she worried about it picking her sister up and moving her
Yeah.
somewhere? Um, all of those things. And again, you may have described what they can do in earlier scenes. And I know you're going to talk a little bit about them in the future of this scene, but helping the reader understand. Because what happens is when we get to a line like, watching everyone else taking the funnel cloud seriously as her sister rushed around like she couldn't wait to get out of here. Now, all of a sudden, instead of thinking about what Kendra is thinking about, which is her sister, now all of a sudden, as the reader, I'm like, funnel clouds? Did I miss the funnel clouds? Where are the funnel clouds? And now I have to go back and see what I
Hmm.
missed instead of moving forward. Whereas if you just orient us to the fact that we haven't seen a funnel cloud in a while, but everyone else is preparing for the next one, but her sister can't wait to get out of here. Now you've told me everything I need to know in that one little sentence because you've told me why I am thinking about them in this moment without necessarily having to go back and explain. The funnel clouds are 9 feet tall and 3 feet wide, and they allow people to listen to other people's conversations. And right, like you don't have to do all of that every time you mention the funnel clouds, but you just
Right.
have to orient me to why is Kendra thinking about them in this context.
Oh, okay. Okay. I think that makes sense.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I will say, Scott, this is one of those things that is really hard for an author to catch on their own
Hmm.
because you are so ingrained in your world, right? Like
Yeah.
you know exactly what the funnel cloud means because
Yeah.
you've been living with the funnel cloud
Yeah.
for however long. But
Yeah.
those of us who aren't as involved in your story as you are, when we come across these things that we don't know what to deal with, we put our mental focus and mental energy on that instead of on the story. And that's where
Hmm.
authors have this responsibility to make that reader burden lower so that the places where we want the reader to have burden and be thinking about the story are the things that they're actually thinking about. But it does make it really hard because it's um, like if you're talking about your job, you mentioned that you were a software engineer, right?
Yeah.
Like as a software engineer, you know a lot about software, right?
Yeah.
So you take a lot of things about software for granted that other people who aren't as involved with software or don't use a computer in their everyday job have a hard time with, right? It's the
Right.
same thing in a story where you would have to stop if you were talking about a software program and be like, okay, and this part of the program does this thing, and you would have to explain it to people who don't have that kind of same amount of knowledge. But again, just like in your day job, something that you do all day, every day feels just like part of your vocabulary. And you don't have to explain it until you're talking to somebody and you see the look on their face and they're like, wait a minute, what are you talking about?
Right. Yeah.
When you're an author, you don't have the benefit of always seeing the look of confusion on someone's face like you do when you're talking.
Right, 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 right. Yeah. And I guess the other thing is, I sort of build this stuff up. So I'm sort of, small to large. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
So basically, I, focus on basically focus on what I need at the moment. And so, yeah, so, is some of it's like, it's a statement of intent and I'll fix it, I'll fix it later. So
Yep.
there's always iteration building up. So I need to basically maybe come up with a better way of describing what they're doing because they're they are also leaving, but they're leaving in a more reasonable, disciplined manner as opposed to
Perfect. Yeah.
yeah.
And just saying that then, Kendra saying, she's watching the funnel clouds as they move out. They're moving more quickly than Cassie is, or Cassie's moving more quickly and more sporadically than they are, right? Like
Right.
just something to tell the reader why you're bringing these funnel clouds up right now.
Okay. Okay.
That's it.
All
All
right.
right. So again, I continue to do this kind of back and forth with
All right.
Cassie doing something and then Kendra having an inner thought. Again, this is one of those places where Kendra shouts as she was starting to crest the ridge. The ground is easier to walk on. I just added an inner thought here of Kendra thinking something like, I'm going to wring her neck when I catch up to her again. This
Yep.
idea that the frustration is still mounting. I still haven't gotten to her. Um, and then just adding that, Kendra continues up and over, and you've got this great line about how the wind hit her and cut through her clothing. And then I just made it more active in here where she's scanning the area. Whereas before it was a little bit disjointed as to where
Hmm.
Kendra and Cassie were. So I just rearranged the order of those. Um, so then when she sees Cassie, Cassie is pacing around some trees where they had met earlier. And you have them next to each other, but
Yeah.
not talking to each other. So I changed some of the lines in here to add, like, think about if you're chasing someone, um, you are going to want to say something to them when they're in earshot, or they're going to say
Right.
something to you. So in this case, I gave you a place for Kendra to walk towards Cassie, but maybe not say anything to her because now she's in one place. I think about like we've been shouting at her now for an entire 2 pages. Now she's stopped. I don't want to spook her. So I'm thinking maybe I'd think something and not say something. But obviously, if you want her to say something, make her say something.
Right.
Then
Yeah.
I added when Cassie saw her, she turned around and ran a few paces back, which is what you had.
Yeah.
What took you so long is what I added, right? So
Right.
now Cassie isn't just coming back to her and like just standing there. She's coming back to her and is like impatient. What took you so long? Like Kendra hasn't been running as fast as she could to catch up with her.
Yeah.
Um, and then, so if somebody tells me what took you so long, what would I say back? I told you to slow down. Kendra tried to keep the edge out of her voice. No use in starting a fight, right?
Right. Okay. That's
And
cool.
then we use the language that you had already about Cassie saying, I need to get out of here. But you had it, I need to get out of here. No one wants me here. Oh, no. Hold on. You had, I just want to get out of here. No one wants me here, and I have a package to deliver. That was a lot. So I made it
Hmm.
much more forceful by making it, I need to get out of here instead of I just want to get out of here,
Okay.
right? No one wants me
Yep.
here, and I have a package to deliver. and then I put Cassie's dialogue tag in the middle of the line just to give it more space and to slow it
Mm.
down a little bit instead of boop, boop, boop. It's boop, take a second, and then the two follow-ups to it, right?
Okay.
And then you have this idea that they shouldn't really be talking about this delivery. So this is where I have Kendra shushing her. Whereas
Mm.
before, it was like, I need to deliver this package. And then Kendra has some inner thought and then starts like telling her she should have done it beforehand. So I just, again, kind of similar to what I did before, I just broke it up so that the dialogue happens in shorter bursts and faster because that's going to
Mm.
keep the momentum of the scene going. So
Okay.
I need to get out of here. Cassie said, no one wants me here and I have a package to deliver. Shh. Kendra looked around, making sure no one was around. No one can hear us. Kendra stepped close to whisper, "You should have delivered it before coming here." And then this was some of Kendra's inner thought before that I just left. Kendra didn't need to tell her sister that doing the conflicting work for the Messenger Guild would make things even worse for herself. This was really good. This was something that you actually added between our session and now. You had mentioned that the whispering was to keep it under wraps, and this gives us really good context. So I really like that. I wanted to keep it. And then instead of Cassie saying a bunch of things, I just made it I split it up to say, just have Cassie say there wasn't time. So instead of her having this big long explanation, because now she's looking for this package, there wasn't time, right? And then this is where Kendra, who for the last 2.5 pages has been trying to keep her frustration with Cassie in check, kind of loses it. And she says, it's been a year. You still don't grasp how dependent we are on your messenger duties, right?
Yeah.
Like letting it get out there. And Cassie just ignores her and is like, where'd you hide it?
Mm.
Um, so this, I have a note here. This is where you have Kendra telling her to keep her voice down again.
Mm.
Um, this feels like it's kind of drawing attention to it. I would actually cut these two lines and just if Cassie's looking for it at some point, Kendra is either going to have a knockdown drag out fight with her or she's just going to help her. So you can kind of go either way with it. But again, trying to keep that pacing of Cassie is got this sense of urgency that Kendra is trying to slow down. Bringing up this other piece didn't feel like it
Okay.
flowed right. So, um, so that is kind of the bulk of this first part.
Right.
And then once you get them to the tree and they kind of get to this place where, okay, they're going to look for the package, you have them stop what they're doing to explain what's happened. And that's about another page and a quarter. I actually think that this information here is in the wrong spot.
Mm.
Cassie is so urgently trying to get to this package so she can get out of this space. It feels very awkward that they're going to stop and have this big long conversation to
Mm.
dissect what's happened. Rather, what I thought was let's get the package and get them on the road to where they're going. And then you can circle back to this scene of what happened, explain it to me, tell me what happened.
Okay. Yeah,
That's,
that is already what I'm sort of already doing. So okay, that makes
yeah.
sense.
Okay. So then when you get them back to the package, you've got another page of them back and forth kind of bickering. I would just recommend speeding that up. You have a lot of details in this, a lot of like joking and what's going to happen next. And again, just for the speed of it, you I want to continue capturing that urgency. So
Hmm.
instead of them talking about what the plan is going to be, and then Kendra stands next to the tree and looks at the scroll, and then they talk about who's going to get it. And then Kendra starts getting it, and then Cassie throws a temper tantrum because Kendra's not letting her get it. And then they have this like funny laugh, and then there's a discussion about who's going to carry it. I just streamlined it to be Kendra saying something like, and again, this is in a comment because I took a lot of editorial liberties here. So this is one of those places where I wanted to show you what it could look like, and then you decide what you like. So
Okay.
that's why it's in the comment. So
Mm.
uh, you keep a lookout, Kendra said. I'll get the package. I can get it. Just tell me where it is. Kendra ignored her and started to climb. Keep a lookout. It's my package, Cassie mumbled. Then you shouldn't have been so selfish. Kendra jumped down, holding the scroll, letting them only chase you. You had some language in there about this joke about,
Yeah.
so I wanted to keep
Yeah.
true to that.
Yeah.
And then Cassie cracks a smile. You've gone mad. And whose fault is that? Kendra said, handing her the scroll. And then Cassie can say, I think it'll hide better in your pack. And now you've done in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines what previously took you an entire page to do.
Mm.
Keeps that sense of urgency that there really isn't time to have this back and forth. It just speeds it up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And again, this is an author voice thing. If the back and forth is important to their relationship, then leaning into that is important. But then you have to describe to the reader why the urgency is no longer there. Is the
Okay.
urgency no longer there because Cassie's not running anymore? Or is the urgency not there because no one's around? Or is the urgency not there because the funnel clouds aren't there? Whatever it is, you're changing the tone. So if you don't like the speed, and again, this is why I put it in a comment instead of making the inline changes, because it changes the whole section, right?
Mm.
If you don't
I'm,
like the change in the section, then you have to describe to us as the reader why now all of a sudden do we have time for climbing trees and joking about who's climbing the tree and who's not climbing the tree. Because as the reader, I'm like, I don't have time for this. I'm running, I'm rushing, I'm getting this thing, I got to deliver this package, and now all of a sudden I have time to stop and goof around. That doesn't make any sense to me. So helping me to understand that um, makes it a little bit easier for me.
okay. Yeah, I'm trying to think because think part of the urgency on Cassie's point is, you know, you know, basically she just wants to run away. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
all the stuff there is basically an excuse just to run away from, because she's feeling, everybody doesn't like her, and she's basically emotion,
Mm-hmm.
just being, and basically she doesn't want to deal with any of her negative emotions, and she's feeling a lot of emotions, and so I think some of there's definitely some urgency, but I think she's making a much bigger deal out of it than there really is. But yeah, it's always that balancing act of,
Mm-hmm.
because the way I was thinking is you have, the immediate threat is gone, but the enemy can always, I think I had it in there somewhere. It's like the enemy can come back at any, at pretty much any point, and it's like, don't be where, if the enemy knows where you are, you don't want to be there, sort of
Mm-hmm.
thing. So it's like, they want all of them want to sort of leave and try to get away from, the storms. And basically, yeah, it's, the further they can get away from any kind of storms, the safer they will be. And so that's why I've
Yeah.
sort of,
If
a
that's the
lot of
case,
illusions to storms.
yeah, if that's the case, then I would say get them out of there as fast as possible.
Mm.
Because you do have this section about what are we going to do if the clouds go back? I don't know.
Yeah,
Right?
they don't
Like,
have an idea how to clearly defend themselves because
right. So if that's the case, then all of this discussion about getting out needs to happen a lot faster. It needs
Okay.
to be like, we don't have time for this. Like, just get out of my way, let me get it, and let's get on our way, but we're going to stay together, right? Like,
Right.
whatever it is,
Right.
fast and harsh if you have to, because if we've got this sense of urgency, keeping it at the top by cutting out anything. And again, thinking about, as an author, thinking about our own experience. Obviously, we weren't being chased by funnel clouds that can hear us or
Yeah.
attack us, right? But thinking about, like, I have 10 minutes to get somewhere that takes 15 minutes. I'm
Yeah.
not going
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
stop and have a conversation about where we put the laundry. I'm just going to say, grab a coat and let's get out the door, right? Doesn't matter
Right.
what it looks like, let's go, right? And that's kind of what we want the reader to feel
Mm.
when Cassie and Kendra are like, we got to get out of here. Something bad is coming. We want the reader to think back on something in their own lives that gives them that sense of, oh, I know what that's like. I don't know what this is like, but I understand that sense of urgency. And oh, they
Okay.
want to chit chat about this, and I just want to get out of here. So,
Right. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
yep,
Yeah. Because yeah, I'm was trying. Oh, okay. We established character, but yeah, you make a lot of sense.
yeah, yeah. So, you establish character and relationships between characters when there's no urgency. When we have all the time in the world to take this road trip, we've planned it in advance, we know where we're going, we know what we're doing, and we're just moseying along. We're walking through this field, we have all the time in the world. But
Okay.
when there's a timeline, when there's a clock on us, when there's a fear of something, all of that goes out the window and it's all about forward motion.
Right. Okay.
So, and then my next notes are very similar. They're trying to figure out where they're going to go. And you've got this
Yep.
scene where they talk about how they can get out and the fact that Enavir has a carriage. And then they get to where the carriages are, and Kendra talks to Enavir, and then Cassie talks to Enavir. Again, I would recommend just speeding all of this up. And again, I just gave you an example here.
Yeah.
We need to find a carriage, Kendra said, but how? I'm too big to play stowaway. Kendra rolls her eyes at Cassie. This isn't a game. We have to be careful. We're out of options, Cassie said. Why don't you catch a ride back with Enavir and I'll meet you at Open Lord's Town? We stay together. We'll both ride with Enavir. She hates me, we'll talk to her, but we have to move fast. Again, there's not a lot of time for this debate. They don't
Mm.
really have any other options. If you have some of this stuff about, what about a carriage, riding is faster than walking and flying is faster than riding, right? Like, this is great. You could definitely include that. I just went super bare bones, fast as possible, but it doesn't have to be this extreme. You can read
Mm.
through what you wrote and say, okay, I really like this part and I really like this part. How do I work it in and still keep that sense of urgency, right? So
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
you can definitely blend them. But again, you'll notice how in about 8 lines, I was able to do what you had in a whole page just by hitting the highlights of it. And again, I
Mm.
went extreme on this. You'll want to blend it. And
Right.
then the same thing when they get to see Enavir, and I apologize because I realized that I left out a whole syllable as I was writing it. But oh, this is also, sorry, real quick. Remember that section I said that it didn't make sense that they stopped to have this conversation about what happened up here?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Um, where Cassie starts to talk about the sun being blotted out by the fog
Right.
barrier, and then, right, like all of that. That can go right after they decide that they're going to talk to Enavir, right? They
Oh.
made the plan, but the carriages aren't right there. They still have to walk to the carriages. That's a
Right.
place now. We have a plan. The sense of urgency is reduced because we still have to walk there. Now is a place for us to have this conversation that we need to have, right? So you
Oh, okay.
move that down into this section. And now as the reader, I don't feel like, wait a minute, we don't have time for this discussion because we've done literally everything we can do. We
Hmm.
got away from the clouds. We got the package. The package is hidden. We made a plan. We're going to go for it. Now there's time and there's peace to be able to add that conversation in. And then when we get to the carriages, we can speed it back up again, right?
Right. Okay.
Okay, so just to finish it off, and I didn't go all the way to the end, but just to kind of give you a little bit of a balance, something like Cassie finishes her story as they approach the main road where a few carriages were already leaving. Again, I tried to use a lot of your orientation.
Hmm.
There she is, Cassie points to Enivir's carriage. You wait there and I'll go talk to her, Kendra says. Good idea, Cassie says, walking away. And then she turns back, and this is where I added some editorial liberties.
Hmm.
Tell her I'm sorry, please. This idea that, like, now that Cassie's not in such a huge rush, now that she knows that she needs help, maybe this is the place, because at the beginning of the call, you were talking about how Cassie isn't really ready to admit that she did anything wrong, but Enevir's been kind of her best friend, or it seemed that way.
Yeah, 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 yeah. A year has gone by, so yeah, she's definitely sorry for
Right,
what she did a
right.
year ago. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is where, and she needs her help. So I feel like if I was in a situation where I hadn't seen somebody that I was friends with for a long time, even if maybe I didn't think I was wrong, knowing that I need their help, maybe I would reach out a little bit.
Right.
So anyway, I just added that little extra in there for you.
All
Kendra
right.
smiled. She was proud of her sister, but she had to hurry.
Right.
And then she made her way to the carriages. She stood quietly next to Enivir as she rushed around to check things. Kendra, Enivir said as she finally saw her, what are you doing here? Because right now, when they meet up, all they say is, all of us are leaving, it's not safe. But there's no like acknowledgement that they know each other or
Hmm.
anything. So as the reader, I want to see that interaction. And
Okay.
my big question would be, what are you doing here? Right? Like, I'm
Right.
not expecting to see you. And then Kendra can say something like, trying to get out, same as everyone. And then Enivir can say something like, where's Cassie? Kendra can point to her and say, over there, we need a ride. Right?
Okay.
And then the explanation can happen and they can call Cassie over. But again, now that they're right on the cusp of being able to get out, that sense of urgency needs to come back. So the conversation needs to be shorter. Maybe Enivir says, we can do our apologies later, just get in the carriage because we got to go, right?
Right.
Or it's my turn in 5 minutes. If you're coming, get in the carriage, right?
Right.
Um, Without the discussion of like who's sitting where and should I hide or should I not hide. It's either like, let's go, we'll figure it out on the ride, or if Enivir is going to say no, letting her say that and letting Kendra and or Cassie talk her into it, but again with that sense of urgency. We got to get out of here. Maybe Enivir doesn't have room in the carriage for her, and Cassie says, I'll sit on top of a crate if I have to. We just please, um,
Yeah.
Kendra won't leave without me. And I can't be the reason that she gets hurt, whatever it
Right.
is. But that sense of urgency at the end to mirror the urgency at the beginning gives you a really well-rounded scene that has great pacing, and the reader understands that this is coming off of a battle scene and it's leading somewhere else. There's a lot of emotional charge happening to it.
Right. Oh, okay. That sounds good.
So, all right. Any
All right.
questions?
I think we covered. Yeah, I think there was one little thing. Yeah, basically, I think in here I said, Cassie let out a sudden breath. I was gonna do. If I said if she let out a surprised breath, does that feel like I'm sliding into her POV, or if I?
Um, no, I don't think so. Because we all interpret the body language of others
Hmm.
all of the time. if you want to play it really safe, you can say something like, she let out a breath that sounded surprised. So
Okay.
then it's not so intentional. It's from a different person's perspective, but most of the time, I don't think your reader is going to feel like you've switched POVs by putting in that body language.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good question.
I think that covered everything. Yeah, this has been very, very helpful. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, well, let me stop sharing and turn the recording off. And thanks again.